Today on the podcast, we're going to look at the overall health of your business, and we're going to look at 10 aspects within your organization, and under each of these aspects, we're going to ask 5 questions. If your answer is yes to any of these 5 questions, you'll give yourself 2 points. If your answer is no, you'll give yourself 0 points, and at the end of this questionnaire, you'll have a score out of 100. This is the Business Fundamentals Show. My name is Lester Philander, and today we're going to look at the overall health of your business. Now, when funders look at a business, they will look at the quantitative component of your business, in other words, the yes or no's. This is the non-negotiables in terms of what it is they get their analytics and their data from. And then there's qualitative-based questions that they might ask you. And this is where they might have a little more room for context. They might have a little more room for flexibility. So for today's podcast, we're only going to focus on the quantitative component. Keep in mind that the average score in the small business arena is about 32%. So if you're coming in at 34, if you're coming in at 40%, don't feel bad. We work very closely with a non-profit organization where they fund businesses that don't have a good credit record, but they are scalable. If you'd like more information, send us an email, info@corpradio.online, and we'll gladly put you in contact with the necessary people with regard to that. Now, the first aspect we're going to ask is about you, the entrepreneur. Now, 81% of businesses either thrive or they fail because of the business owner. You might have a phenomenal business, you can have a great business concept, but if you as the business owner is not driving it, then that business will, not could, it will collapse as a result. Now, some of these questions that I'll be asking here, they might feel, these are futile questions, they might not be relevant to me, but there is method behind each and every question. Even though you might not see it, just go with it. And be as honest as you can, because at the end of the day, you're looking at the health of your own organization. The nice thing about this is if you only get 32 or 34 or 44, there are simple things that you can implement in your business today that can drastically boost your score. We did an assessment with a business about 2 months ago, and they came in at 40, I think it might have been 42 or 40. And that very same day, we implemented a few things and got them up to 58. So that is an 18-point increase on the quantitative component of this business. So with that said, nothing is stopping you. Now, the other thing I need to remind you of, if your business scores less than 50%, your business is seen as a high-risk investment. If, however, it scores higher than 75%, it is seen as a low-risk investment. That does not guarantee that you'd get funding. And also, if you come in lower than 50%, that does not guarantee that you will not get funding, because the qualitative component of the application gives more weight. It gives more context. Okay, so this part should not be taken in or as a holistic view of the business. Okay, so let's look at the entrepreneur. Now, the first question is, have you written a book or thesis about the industry that you find yourself in? This can be formally or informally. Now, when I'm saying have you written a book, it doesn't have to be a 300-page textbook, but it's a documented culmination of everything you've collected when you've done your due diligence before going into the industry. Now, due diligence is something you conduct before you start the business, and it's something you continue doing after you're already operating within that industry. When you write a book, it records or it recruits certain parts of the brain that usually doesn't get activated when you just go about doing your normal things. When you're writing, you are forced to think deeper. You are forced to go further. You are forced to conduct research. You are forced to ask people. You're forced to ask competitors or customers what their experience is. And that way you can offer a more comprehensive solution to what they might be struggling with. So that is the first question. Have you written a book or thesis about the industry that you found yourself in, whether formally or informally? The second question is, do you have corporate experience in this industry? The third question is, are you actively involved in the business? In other words, 80% of your time or more. A lot of business owners, they have more than one business, or they might have a full-time job, and this business might be their side hustle. So if you are actively involved, in other words, more than 80% of your time during the business day is allocated to this business, then you'll give yourself yes, and that would be 2 points. And of course, have you owned a business before this one? And the last question under this aspect is, do you have an official business coach? That is the first 5 questions under the first aspect of business, which is you, the entrepreneur. The second question I'm going to ask is about management and leadership. Okay. Now, the first question is, do you have management or leadership experience at corporate level? Second question, do you have a clear organogram with defined roles and positions within your organization? The third question, are you actively involved in recruitment? Fourth question, are you actively involved in staff discipline? And the last question, are you aware of your management or leadership style? Now, if you don't know what your management or leadership style is, I've done a podcast on management and leadership. Go onto our website or go onto our YouTube channel and you'll have all of that content available to you there. The third aspect of your business, we are looking at marketing. Now, marketing is going to be broken into, you're going to get marketing, and the fourth aspect is digital marketing. It'd be remiss of me to just ignore the digital marketing. We are in 2025, so if your business is not on the digital platforms, you are losing out exponentially. Now, let's come to marketing. The first question is, do you have a website? Second question, do you have a formal company profile? Third question, do you have a designated marketing employee, team, or agency on retainer? Fourth question, do you know your marketing conversion rate? The fifth question, do you have a unique selling proposition? And when I talk about unique selling propositions, I don't want you to say, look, we're the best priced or we are the best quality. Those are easy, low-hanging fruit options to choose from. Come up with something a little bit more unique. Okay. And then the fourth aspect of business is digital marketing. So this is where we go a little bit deeper. Yeah. So the first question in marketing is, do you have a website? The first question in the digital marketing aspect is your website optimized for SEO? SEO stands for search engine optimization. Again, I'm going to be doing a detailed podcast on digital marketing. I think with that one, I'm going to bring in a guest that really understands the nitty-gritties about digital marketing and everything associated to that. Second question on digital marketing, do you have a clear digital blueprint, strategy, or structure? Most people say, look, I am on social media, I have a Facebook page, I post every now and then. That is not a clear digital strategy. The third question is, of course, do you have social media pages? The fourth question, do you have email addresses and WhatsApp numbers of these followers? And the reason that is important is the social media algorithms change. And what strategy might have worked beautifully for your business last year, if implemented in the exact same way this year, you might have a very different result, both favorably or unfavorably. So it is important for you to collect that information, because when I send a WhatsApp or when I send an email to someone, the email or the WhatsApp cannot be contorted in any way. It cannot be slowed down. As I send it, that is how it is received. It is not manipulated by any form of algorithm, which is what the social media platforms have put in place. And the last question under digital marketing is, do you send out weekly or bi-weekly mailers to those email addresses that you've collected? Okay. Fifth aspect in your business is human resources. Now, when you are small, these are the things that we tend to overlook. We think, I'm not big enough, I don't need to focus on those things just yet. But if you're building this empire and you're just stacking brick on brick and brick, because when you're focusing on sales and marketing, those are visible assets, or these are visible aspects of the business where you can see the growth manifesting. But we tend to neglect the cement, which is what holds everything together. Now, human resources is a key ingredient in that cement component when building this business. And the earlier you start, the better off your business. In fact, the earlier you start, the higher your business can grow. Okay, so human resources. Do you send your staff on training? Now, a lot of us, we might have 5 staff members and they're good at what they do. So we feel that, okay, the business has grown nicely as a result. We can take our foot off the brake a bit. And sometimes, when we allow that virus of complacency to come in, that is where things start going wrong. So if you are proactive and you're constantly sending staff to remind themselves or to sharpen them in this aspect of business or in the skill that they're bringing or that they are mandated to bring to the organization, the business only benefits from that as a result. In fact, for bigger companies that allocates a certain amount of their net profit toward skills development, that is a fund you can then tap into. So it might not necessarily come from your margin, but it's something that has already been allocated. Okay. Do you understand the basics of the basic of conditions of employment. Now, the the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, it's a very comprehensive act, but there are certain fundamentals that every business owner needs to know. This pertains to the amount of overtime your staff is allowed to work legally, the minimum wage, things like that. And then again, is the basic conditions of employment visible when you have more than 5 employees within your organization? That must be visible within the office environment. Okay. Are you SARS, UIF, and QUADA compliant? Do you have clear performance metrics to motivate and place your staff? Or do you have clear performance metrics in place to motivate staff? And then lastly, do you have clear parameters and milestones which may result in staff increases or promotion? Okay, those are the 5 questions under human resources. The next one we're going to focus is on sales. Now, do you have a strategic sales system with pipelines and funnels in place? If you don't know what those are, again, have a look at our podcast on sales, which is customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer growth. We did a full podcast on that. Have a look at our website. Do you have a dedicated salesperson or team? Do you know your customer acquisition cost on average? Do you know your client lifetime value on average? And the last question is, do you know what your best performing product or service is and the percentage of revenue that brings in? Now, that is important to know. And if you listen to that sales podcast, you'll get a detailed understanding as to why we ask those questions. Okay, 4 aspects left. So, financial management. Are you using a cloud-based accounting software? Second question, do you see your accountant at least 4 times a year? Third question, when making important decisions, do you consult your financial data? Fourth question, do you compare your financial performance to the previous financial year and discuss it monthly? And the last question, do you know what your company's net worth is with calculated tangible metrics? Not you saying, listen, I put a lot of time and a lot of focus into this business. I value this business at 15 million when there's no assets in there and the amount of profit per year is about 50,000 Rand. So there needs to be tangible calculated metrics in place that got you to that valuation. Okay, then legal. Are you registered with all the regulatory bodies within your industry? That's the first question under legal. The second question is, are you compliant with the POPIA Act? The third question is, do you have a legal company on call or on retainer? Fourth question, does your company franchise have shareholders or investors? And if so, are you adequately protected? And the last question, do you have all the needed insurances in place, especially key man insurance? That is under legal. Then under admin, does your company have a centralized software system or program? Do you have a designated admin person, virtual assistant, or admin department? Do you have a budget allocated to admin and IT? Do you have a CRM system that you're currently using? And the last question is, admin flows through every department, or all folders sorted in an orderly manner? Okay. And then the last section, especially for businesses that have tangible products or in manufacturing, do you have an ops manager in place? And the reason I think this is important is because if you as the business owner are focused on operations as well, you lose sight of the strategic components. Strategic management and leadership focuses on the next 3 to 5 years, whereas operations managers only focus on the day-to-day components. Okay. Second question, is your company compliant with all occupational health and safety checks? Are there any tangible quality control metrics in place? Are there SOPs, in other words, standard operating processes for every function within the organization? And lastly, are you aware of any bottlenecks within your organization? Those are 50 questions that I've asked under 10 aspects of your business. Each of these aspects have 5 questions. So for every question I've asked that you've had an answer yes to, you'll give yourself 2 points. Okay. And if you scored higher than 50, it means that your business is relatively healthy. If you've scored lower than 50, do not be alarmed, because as I've mentioned, these are simple things that can be implemented that can drastically increase your score. I mean, if you're just looking at a random question under financial, do you have an accounting-based software? If you just implement that in your business, and there are free versions and it's cloud-based, and the reason you want it to be cloud-based is because computers crash from time to time. And if all your information is on one hardware system and now it crashes and you don't have access to it, all of your data is lost as a result. So it is important for you to implement some of these basic things. And yes, some of them will cost you a bit of money, but you need to invest in that business to ensure that this business outlasts you. So that is our session for this week. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. If you've got value from this podcast, please send us an email, and I'd love you to be part of the Corp community where you can access all of our other podcasts absolutely free of charge. We have the Corporate Show hosted by Jeff. We have the AI Show hosted by Shaul. We have 2 new shows that is coming next year. And then, of course, we have the Acquisition and Franchising Show, as well as the Business Fundamentals Show hosted by myself. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. Until then, goodbye and God bless.